good evening to all of you. Welcome to the second episode of the iTalk series conducted by IEDC CET. So, iTalk is basically a talk session that we conduct in which we invite notable entrepreneurs or investors to have discussions with us on various topics and to promote the startup culture in general. So, as our guest for today, we have with us Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan. He's a man who needs no introduction. It is with immense pleasure that I'm welcoming you today, sir. He's best known as the co-founder of Infosys, India's first major IT services firm, and he's also a well-regarded thought leader and investor. So, on behalf of IEDC, on behalf of Calls of Engineering Trivandrum, I welcome you, sir, to this second episode of iTalk.
Thank you.
Yeah, and today, as you may all be knowing, he is here with us to share his insights on the impact of COVID-19 on the IT industry. So he'll be, throughout this session, I think we'll be able to learn and know a lot about this topic from him. So if you please, sir, over to you.
Thank you. And good evening to every one of you. It's a privilege to present this to you, to interact with you today evening, because I'm basically from Thiruvananthapuram. I was born, brought up in Trivandrum. I studied till BSc in Trivandrum, so Model School, Arts College, University College, and then I moved to IIT Madras, where I did my MSc Physics and MTech Computer Science. And after that, of course, I've spent almost all the time outside Kerala. But till April, that is till the COVID struck, I used to come to Kerala almost every month, every other month actually. So I have still a lot of connects, a lot of interactions. I was lucky to be associated with the Startup Village. I was lucky to be associated with the Technopark, the startups in the Technopark. So a lot of associations and a lot of interesting interactions with not just the startups, with businesses. I'm part of CII, so Confederation of Indian Industries. So I know some of the industrialists there. So it's an honor and a privilege to get this opportunity to interact with you. So I'm going to talk today about post-COVID opportunities. I'm not going to, I will touch upon the IT industry, but I want to broaden the topic to think about what other opportunities exist after the COVID, during the COVID and after COVID, actually, because we need to start thinking about what the world will look like after COVID. This is a quote from the former president of US, Abraham Lincoln, who said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And this is my single important advice to you. I was lucky in being able to be part of the IT industry, creation of the IT industry, not just in India, but in the world. And I will talk about this as we go along. And that's the reason why I'm saying this. The best way to predict the future is to create it. You have the opportunity to create the future. You have the opportunity to create future businesses. You have the opportunity to create industries. You have the opportunity to change the face of India. And I think it's for each one of you. I think this is something that you need to keep in mind and try and work hard to contribute in whichever way you can to create this future. First things first, actually, we are in the midst of this pandemic. It's not gone. COVID is still around, unfortunately. So take care of yourself, family, colleagues. And this is something we need to remember, because till we have the vaccine, and it looks like the vaccine will be there probably middle of next year, the best way to prevent getting infected, prevent our family and friends and colleagues getting infected is to act responsibly, wear the mask, keep social distance, hygiene and things like that. So protect self and family, protect the business and employees, protect the economy. We don't realize that, but if we act responsibly, we can open up the businesses, we can open up the colleges, schools, etc. And if you look at some of the countries in the East, actually, Taiwan, for example, they have opened up the economy and are doing well. Actually, China is also doing well. Update your skills. This is a period of extreme uncertainty. You will have time in your hands because you're not going out and things like that. So take time to read up, take time to update your skills, etc. And last point, help others. This is a time when people need support. So simple thing, right? If you have an old phone lying around, if you have an old computer lying around, clean it up, update the software, and give it to somebody who does not have the ability to connect to the internet. Simple thing, right? And all of us will have phones lying around, etc. Or help somebody set up the internet connectivity and things like that, so that their children can attend classes remotely. So there are many things that you can do with the skills that you have. Life is full of twists and turns. Be resilient. This is another key message from my side. Life is never a straight line, right? I have actually seen in my life many twists and turns. After my SSLC, I took physics, chemistry, biology stream rather than the first group, actually, thinking that I will become a doctor. I applied for MBBS admissions at Trivandrum Medical College, did not get admission, so I had to rethink, actually, change track. Then I took BSc Physics. Luckily, I got into IIT Madras for MSc Physics. That's where I got introduced to computers, again changed to MTech Computer Science. And so when opportunities come, you have to take those opportunities, you have to take advantage of this, and that's part of being resilient, actually. Never say die, take the life as it comes to you, play with the cards that are dealt with you. If you play cards, you can't actually wish for the cards that you get, right? You are dealt with your hand, and you have to play with the hand and win, right? That's the most important thing. So it's not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It's not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that is able best to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. This is true for individuals. This is true for businesses. This is true for economies, etc. And this is what entrepreneurship is all about. We need to learn from nature. Nature, over billions of years, actually has learned to adjust. We may think that climate change is something that we need to worry about, but it's truly we need to worry about, right? Nature doesn't have to worry about it. Nature will be there. The universe will be there after if the humans are not there, actually. In fact, if you look at the age of the universe, we humans have been there only for a minuscule amount of time. The universe has been there for billions of years, actually, and it will continue to be there, actually. And so the best way to survive is to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. And all these messages are actually very relevant when we think about the current scenario, the current situation. And this is probably one of the best lessons that we can take from what is happening around us. There are no real positives, but if there is one positive, that's that we need to learn to survive, and learning to survive is to adapt and adjust, right? Now let me give you an outline. I will talk about if you're passing out now, if you're passing out next year, if you're a startup co-founder, what you need to do, and then go into the future and what which future is all about. And we will have time for Q&A at the end, actually. Now, if you're passing out now, it's November, right? So most probably, most of you are going to continue to study. But if let's say there is somebody here who's passed out this year, the job scenario is challenging during a crisis. And I've seen this, and lots of studies have been done where, if you're looking for a job right now, most companies are in difficult times. They're in the mode of cutting cost. They may not be recruiting, etc. So it is a challenging period. The salaries that you get may not be the best and things like that. So my advice is, if you can continue studies, delay looking for a job. Maybe postpone it by 2 years. If you've done undergraduate, do a postgraduate. If you've done postgraduate, maybe look for PhD admission and things like that. If you're already placed, please find out when to join, because joining dates may get delayed, changed. Sometimes offers may be canceled. So have a plan B, update your skills based on your employer, be ready to be the best employee when you join. If you're going abroad to study, track how classes are going to start and when you can travel, etc. Again, globally, education is disrupted, right? If you're passing out next year or beyond, and that's probably most of you, first and foremost, you're going to see a new pedagogy of teaching, right? Education, hybrid model of course delivery, remote learning and things like that. You need to adjust to that. You need to have the connectivity. You need to have the self-discipline to learn, because you're not in the classroom environment. Very easily you can actually skip or just turn it on and walk away. Don't even attend and things like that. But education is very important, and this experience and the skills that you get during this period, I think will be very useful, because in the future most of the things are going to be hybrid. If you've chosen your major and minor, please find out which businesses are fast growth companies, have fast growth companies. And I will come back to this actually, track these for future employment. If you're choosing a major or minor, please find out a wave to ride on, and I'll come back to this also. Volunteer with an NGO related to the field chosen. I know I keep on talking about volunteering because this is something that you can do, create the habit of giving back. Even, organizing something like this, taking leadership positions in IEDC and things like that, or, such structures that exist in an education institution will give you experience of, being a leader, handling such events, functions, etc. Intern with startups in the chosen field, because some of you may not actually become entrepreneurs, or most of you may not become entrepreneurs, but that experience how startups work, what are the challenges they face, and how do they manage to overcome those challenges are interesting experiences. And if you want to start a business, this is the time to understand the startup process. If there is a course on entrepreneurship, either for credit, not for credit, attend that. There are lots and lots of courses on entrepreneurship. There are lots of actually YouTube videos and things like that. Start listening, seeing those and understanding the startup process, there is a clear science to starting a business. And understand that networking with the startup ecosystem. So there are ecosystems in your college. There are ecosystems at in the info park, in the techno park, and things like that. Identify potential co-founders. Typically, co-founders are people who that means your classmates, batchmates, your friends, your relatives, etc., etc. And so identify potential founders and start talking to them about the idea. Look at the fit, look at the value system, look at their objective for starting, and these need to be aligned, and that's why the co-founders are extremely important. If you're a startup co-founder, have a runway plan for the next 24 months. We do not know when this will be over. Very difficult time for businesses also. Several businesses are finding it challenging. So for example, if you're in travel, if you're in transportation, this is a very challenging period. If you're in content delivery, you're actually probably doing very well because all of us are consuming content in large quantities actually. So if you're a content business, definitely you're going to see benefit from that. Can you repurpose your product to get additional revenues? So look at maybe a small pivot and things like that, because you need to get revenues if your existing revenue streams are broken. Can you reduce unnecessary expenses, reduce cash burn? Have again plan B. In life, always plan B is very important. Seek support from your current investors so that they can do the cash infusion, pivot and get current revenues. Clearly, again, that's why I said repurpose your product, right? Look for an M&A, merger and acquisition. Sometimes you may run out of cash and things like that. You want the business to survive. You want your product to survive. You want to support your customers. So merge with another entity at that point who's probably financially stronger. Freeze, and last option is freeze everything, put it to bed and restart later. So now I'll come to riding the wave and the opportunities that I see. What gives me the confidence about this? See, future is not a linear extrapolation of the past. Future is created by integrating past experiences, current circumstances, addition and removal of constraints. It gets impacted by a crisis, a disruptive technology, and it's deeply influenced by leaders and entrepreneurs. So this is why I said that you need to create the future that you want, and it can be done. And I will keep coming back to this message again and again, because we are always looking for a faster, better, cheaper way to do things using better tools and technology. So, think about this. You are all too young actually to know that, 25 years back, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have internet. And our way to communicate would be a fixed line telephone, which comes to your home. It's fixed line because, it is delivered through a copper wire and things like that. You would have a modem to connect to online. And internet was probably very, very restricted, not the internet that etc. And you need to know a lot of technology before you can connect online or before you can actually send an email or things like that. And look at today, how easy it is to connect. We have mobile technology, mobile phones, we have internet, and it's faster, it's better, it's cheaper, and we are always looking for faster, better, cheaper way to do things. Identify sectors and businesses that are creating the future, and a lot of businesses will create this new future that we think about. So my own experience, right? I was at the right place at the right time. at IIT Madras. I joined computer science in 1977, MTech computer science. That's when the personal computer was introduced. It democratized computing. Lots and lots of software had to be written. And we realized when we started in Infosys that India will be a place to develop this software because India has large number of people, talent, abundant talent, and India, being a lower cost economy, can develop this software at cheaper cost. We knew that at some point of time, connectivity will improve because in 1981, the connectivity was not there. So we used to actually develop the software and send tapes across using courier and things like that. And we believed, and that really happened. Connectivity will improve, collaboration tools will be introduced which will allow digital work to be done remotely. So look at this, 1981, in some sense, we got an inkling of the world changing to become a digital world. And today, it is because the world is digital that our life is continuing. Education can be done remotely. Healthcare can happen using teleconsult. E-commerce can happen. Retail is moving online, etc. So this is how some people see the march of technology and take advantage of that to create new products, services, new businesses, and that's how future happens. And that's the message I want to repeatedly give you again and again. So we created the successful IT business out of India based on above principles, actually. And today that business is $190 billion, employs about 4.5 million people, and it's a very successful world-class business out of India. Now, what is in front of you? I talked about just digital computing and telecommunication, but look at it, smartphones, IoT, and computing everywhere, right? Telecom infrastructure improving with 4G, 5G. Internet itself is expanding to include sensors, etc. So we have about 4-5 billion people connected using smartphones, computers, etc. But with sensors and cameras and other appliances and devices and things like, we'll have 40 to 50 billion connected devices on the internet. So the internet is expanding in explosive ways, actually. Robotics, not just robotics from a mechanical robotics, but robotic business processes and things like automating business processes, blockchain technology, cloud computing infrastructure, which gives you unlimited computing, unlimited memory at very cheap cost. Huge amount of data is being created, and that itself is a huge opportunity, and so on, actually. And what is called the fourth industrial revolution. So I'm a child of the third industrial revolution, and you are all the children of fourth industrial revolution, and you have to actually create the new world, which is going to be a product of the fourth industrial revolution. And if today the world is $80 trillion, the global economy is $80 trillion, it's estimated that the fourth industrial revolution will multiply that by another 3-4 times. That means in your work life, that is in the next 30 years, for example, the world is going to grow to maybe 200-300 billion to $1 trillion, not billion, $1 trillion actually. And India itself will be multi-trillion dollars, and I'll come back to that. And that's the future that you have to create. You need to do it, and that's the opportunity that you have. Every industry will get impacted, and typically what happens is that it's not the existing companies, it's not the large companies that bring these innovations. I won't have time to go into that. Typically what happens is startups that are going to create these new innovations, new business models and things like that. And that's why entrepreneurship is actually being promoted everywhere in the world. And in India also, we are promoting entrepreneurship. Look at this, actually. Healthcare is going to get transformed. Financial services is already getting transformed. Retail is getting transformed. Manufacturing with new materials, robotics, automation, 3D printing, transportation with new fuel technology, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, hospitality with asset-light models, promoted by OYO rooms or Airbnb and things like that. So every single sector is getting transformed. So, you can actually ride on technology, you can ride on industry. So choose a technology, choose an industry, and you will not be wrong, actually. And that's why I said, find the way to ride on. If you want to make a career in those businesses, or if you want to become an entrepreneur, you need to identify this. And that's why it's important for you to think about, what sector, what major and minor you're doing today. IT industry itself, and I firmly believe that our industry is extremely strong, financially strong. It has tremendous brand equity and credibility. See, during this pandemic, the industry grew. So at the bottom of the screen, you will see that in Q2 of this year, that is Q2 ending September 30th in 2020, you can see the growth rate. This is quarter-on-quarter growth rate. TCS grew at 4.8%, Infosys grew at 4%, quarter-on-quarter. Annualized, they are expected to grow at least by 10%. 10% at the $190 billion run rate for the industry is actually significant, actually. Each of these companies, TCS is $20+ billion, Infosys is $12+ billion. So they're growing at 10% even today. So last year, the industry hired 205,000 employees. It is expected to grow around 10%. That means it will add another 300 to 400,000 employees this year also. Industry is creating global footprint because of the visa regulations and things like tightening of the visa regulations. So there will be less and less chance of employees being sent from India to other places, because each of these locations is going to be handled by local employees, actually. But you will get to work with global companies. You will get the opportunity to work on global projects and things like that. And the industry is very robust, very strong, financially very strong. They continue to recruit people, and the industry in its 40+ year history has never laid off people in a big way. We have not seen any impact on the industry. I will just briefly touch upon a couple of other industries which I strongly believe are significant opportunities. These are new age industries. Just like computing was a new age industry, biotech is a new age industry. And again, India has a huge opportunity here. You may have read that 70% of the vaccines for the world are being developed or manufactured in India. It's created somewhere else, but the manufacturing happens in India. So the pharma sector, the healthcare, biotechnology sector, all are significant opportunities. And I talked about healthcare being transformed, but look at this. We want new antibacterial, antiviral drugs, and these drugs are now created using technology, using computing power, using artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, and things like that. Identifying new molecules, looking at drug interactions, etc. It's all computing driven, actually. So it's at the intersection of biology and engineering, biology and sciences, biology and chemistry. That's where the action is. You may have heard about the two of the vaccines are what are called mRNA vaccine. What does that mean? You're taking the RNA signature from the virus, reproducing that. That means it's an artificial thing in the lab, and injecting back into the system, back into the human body to create a response, immune response actually. So this is an engineered virus actually, which is being introduced into the body, which creates the immune system, immune response in the human body. Similarly, we're using wearable devices and things like that to track health parameters. The whole biotech space is going to change how healthcare is being delivered, how we cure diseases, how we stay healthy, and things like that. And the last point here, we may be able to reverse aging also. Very, very interesting field. Similarly, the area of data business, again, an extension of IT. We are producing huge amount of data. How do we create and manage large data sets? How do you process these large data sets, the computing power that's required, the algorithms that are required? How do you create data warehouses and share these data warehouses for newer and newer applications and things like that? Because data itself will become a huge asset. NASSCOM estimates that this sector alone will add 500 billion to Indian economy in the next 5 years. $500 billion in the next 5 years, actually. So value is derived from data by creating inferences out of that, intelligences out of that, using AI and ML tools, actually. This is the new tool that we have, new computing tool that we have. And I would really say that every engineering discipline must actually learn AI, ML discipline of sciences, actually, because that's going to be used in everything, actually. Even if you're an architect, you will use AI, ML tools to actually automate the design process. But in order to do that, we need large amount of data, and that data has to be curated. That data has to be massaged to eliminate biases, completeness. We have to look at traceability. We have to look at explainability, and lots of work is there. And if we can automate the sense and respond, that's the opportunity, really. Lastly, I strongly feel that you are actually in the best place to be in the world. If 20th century is the century of the United States, I believe 21st century is going to be the century of India. Of course, there will be slowdowns, but when I look at over a 50, 100-year period, when I look at the next 30 years of your work life or 40 years of your work life, the opportunity that India provides is tremendous, actually. It's the second largest consumer base, and consumer-driven economy, consumer-driven economic development is one of the drivers for growth, actually. We will become a major economy sooner than later. Today, we are about 2.7, 2.8 trillion dollar economy, but pretty soon we will be a $10 trillion economy. And in the next 40 years, we will be a $20 trillion economy. What gives me the confidence? 1992, 93, 26, 27 years back, India was a $600 billion economy. So we have grown 4-5 times in the last 25 years. So from here also, I strongly believe that we can grow 4-5 times in the next 20 years, and we can grow approximately 10 times in the next 40 years. The per capita income will go to $10,000 from the $2,000 today, again 5 times growth. India will become a middle class in majority, middle income country. We will have several world-class companies and industries, and already you are seeing multiple unicorns emerging from India, and enormous wealth is to be made. This will completely transform. But you must ask this question: what kind of India will you build? We have everything that going for us. We have 4 million plus IT professionals, and these are the people who have global mindset. They have the global experience, and they're the people who are doing many of the startups and things like that. And the new people who are joining the work ecosystem, the students who are joining, becoming entrepreneurs and things like that. We have introduced entrepreneurship in colleges. We have incubators in academic institutions. The cost of starting a business is actually very low. because cost of computing has come down, cost of storage has come down, cost of telecommunication has come down, and we have one of the lowest cost in the world actually to start a business. And again, that's an opportunity that India provides. We want to create an equitable, sustainable, and inclusive India, because India is still not there. In fact, the world is not equitable, sustainable, and inclusive. This crisis has actually amplified the disparities. For example, white collar work can be done remotely. Blue collar work, factories, people who work with their hands, etc. They are losing jobs. Actually, they couldn't work. So there is, disparity in the world, and we need to create a world that's more equitable. We need a new development model. We need 21st century businesses and business models. And there are significant opportunities in terms of creation of smart cities, investing in digital infrastructure, physical infrastructure, new airports and things like that, new models for urban areas. Agriculture is getting transformed. We need to think about social security so that nobody is left behind. And that's the opportunity, to create the most livable place, the best place for education, the best place to work, best place for entrepreneurship, the best place for sustainable living, and the number one in research and innovation. What some believe US is today, I think we need to make India to be a country of the 21st century. This is my last slide. So when you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside that world. Try not to bash at the walls too much. Try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money, but that is a very limited life. You need to actually think big. You need to dream, and you need to deliver on that, execute on that dream. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact. Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it, you can influence it. And once you learn that, you will never be the same again. And I'm a living example of that. Born and brought up in Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala. And today I'm talking to you. We have had the experience of building Infosys. Infosys is a world-class company. We had the experience of creating the IT industry that has transformed the world. And I see significant opportunities to continue to do this in the future also.
Yes, sir. So once again, a huge thank you for giving us such a really informative session. We feel so lucky to hear these insights from you. Thank you, sir. So we had actually, for registration of this event, we had actually published a Google form and asked students whether they would like to ask any questions to you. So we had got a few responses, and we had selected some of the questions that we'd like to ask to you now.
Okay.
So, yeah. So question that we got was, almost majority of the participants in this sessions are engineering students. So do you think engineers in India are undervalued in any way? So a trend that we see is that most of the students from different branches, in the end, when they go for placements, they usually, or most of the people, they end up in a software company doing an IT job. So do you think that engineers in India, irrespective of their branch of study, are not used to their full potential by going after a career in software engineering? What do you think?
Yeah, first, there is high growth in the IT industry. So it's actually pulling in people from all branches and all disciplines of engineering, retraining them to become computer professionals. They all, if you're an engineering student, you are exposed to computing already, right? So because of the high growth, the industry was pulling in people from all disciplines of engineering. That growth has slowed down, from growing at 100% or even 35%. Now the growth rate is about 10%. So we will have, people needed in other sectors, and other sectors are starting to grow very fast now. So the opportunities exist now, as I explained in my presentation, in manufacturing, right? Creating robots, or creating autonomous vehicles, or creating new fuels and things like that, electric vehicles. If you look at healthcare, the whole area of medical devices and things like that, the whole area of biotechnology. Every sector today, if you just go to banking, for example, the whole financial service industry is getting digitized in a very, very accelerated manner, etc. Of course, all of these will require use of computing. There is no escape from that, actually. So, you need to think creatively. You need to look at businesses which are going to leverage these. What happens typically is, in any industry, 10-20% of the companies are leaders in the use of technology. So you need to identify those companies, and if you join those companies, you can actually be a civil engineer or you can be a mechanical engineer, because they will fully leverage your knowledge. Plus, of course, you will have to leverage your knowledge of computing and things like that.
Okay.
So opportunity exists everywhere.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And we have got a question from a participant. Akash has asked, in this particular session, you mentioned that we should reduce the gap between the white collar and blue collar job. Practically speaking, is this really possible? If yes, how can we do this?
See, first of all, if you look at a developed economy like US, about 2 to 3% of the people are working in agriculture, and their productivity is very high. They produce all the food produce that's required for the entire country, and exporting also. So in India today, about 40% of the people, or 40 to 50% of the people, are dependent on agriculture. So we need to first move them to some other job. Typically, what we are thinking is, they should move to manufacturing, but manufacturing in the SME sector, small and medium enterprises, in food production, in micro enterprises, in small and medium enterprises and things like that, who are creating, who are tier 2, tier 3 suppliers of manufacturing companies, etc. Because the large companies will assemble these things using robots, but the smaller companies will not introduce so much technology. So there will be still workers required. There will be workers required in construction and things like that. A lot of infrastructure investments are required. So we need to move them. And similarly, we need to look at reducing the employment required in manufacturing, and a lot of services jobs will be created, healthcare, for example. So we need to look at where people can be deployed. We need to look at how can we increase their income levels, right? Today, about 60% of people are making only $2, or about 100 rupees per, or 150 rupees per day. Now, how can we increase this to maybe 1,000 rupees per day and things like that? And that's what we need to do. Kerala, in some sense, is more advanced in terms of economic development and social development than other states. But we need to bring up every other state to that same level. Kerala doesn't have too many manufacturing jobs. Kerala doesn't have too many agriculture jobs and things like that. So we need to look at Kerala model in some sense in other places. It can be done. It has to be done. We have no choice. We have no choice to transform our society, but to transform our society.
Akash has added to, but then we need farmers and brown collar jobs. Someone must do. He had added to his question.
Yeah, but look at the development that's happening in farming. Using satellite images and things like that, you can actually identify what state the crop is in, what is the crop actually, is there diseases, are there diseases, if there are, then we can automate actually the delivery of pesticides, we can automate the delivery of fertilizers, we can automate the delivery of water. You can completely automate agriculture actually, and that's the direction that we need to go to increase the productivity, increase the income for farmers and things like that, reduce the labor content. But the challenge is to figure out where will this labor go, right? And once you automate, you will find that actually you can actually converting everything to digital so that you can actually manage it with minimum human intervention. That's what is happening. Factories become automated, robots, etc. But then we have to figure out where will these people go when you replace them with machines and things like that. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's the challenge and an opportunity. So they will work in financial services, they will work in healthcare, they will work in education, they will work in other, entertainment. So they will work in other sectors actually.
Okay. Vishnu has asked, Sir, do you think working in a consultancy firm like Deloitte would help in getting practical knowledge before becoming an entrepreneur?
Yes, you will actually understand how businesses work. You will help solve their problems and things like that. But see, what is important is to be self-motivated, self-driven, manage your productivity yourself, become a problem solver, understand the mechanics of a business models and things like that, and then that helps you become an entrepreneur.
Okay, thank you, sir. What are some of the mistakes you wished you could have avoided when you started your company?
Fortunately for Infosys and for me, the twists and turns that happened or potential mistakes didn't hurt me too much. I was lucky, right? When I didn't get admission for MBBS, yes, I was set back for some time, but I recovered, right? So do I say that my choice of taking physics, chemistry, biology for pre-degree or 12th, was it a mistake? Today, hindsight, it is not a mistake. It has worked out. Similarly, for example, as soon as I became CEO of Infosys in 2007, Infosys was growing at 36% that year. So we actually gave 25,000 offers in canvases that year to recruit people. And the next year, the entire financial crisis happened and the industry was turned upside down. Growth rates crashed. And we didn't need to actually bring in those 25,000 people. We didn't need those people because people who were already employed, our employees were on bench. So what did we do? Because we felt that we could afford to do it, we actually honored those offers, brought in those people, increased the training period, and then when the growth rate came back, we could deploy those people. So the mistake, yes, we managed actually. And so in the case of Infosys, yes, we made smaller mistakes, but we quickly recovered, and luckily we took the right decisions ultimately. And that's what success is all about. That's what resilience is all about. And that's why I said, you need to learn to adapt and adopt and adapt.
Yes, sir. Another question that we got through the Google Forms was about Bitcoin. So in 2018, I guess there was a ban. RBI had issued a ban on cryptocurrency, but then again that was lifted in March, I guess, this year itself. So do you think cryptocurrencies will serve as a reserve for big companies in India? What is your view about cryptocurrency?
See, first of all, the technology underneath Bitcoin, which is blockchain and things like that, that's a very important technology. There is many uses for blockchain and things like that. Now, digital currency, digitization of financial transactions, again, that's something that is going to transform financial services, and India has already adopted that. There's a move from Prime Minister down, push from Prime Minister down to use less and less physical currency and more digital transactions. It's not digital currency, but digital transactions. So digitization of financial services is already happening. Now, will we use Bitcoin? So see, the challenge with Bitcoin is it's completely opaque, and how it is gets managed, etc. There are no regulations around this, etc., and that will be fought by states or nations or countries, and there will be pushback, because when something has no visibility, no transparency, it will be a challenge to the existing financial infrastructure that exists in a country. But countries are looking to see how can they use it, adopt it. There will be regulations. So when regulations are introduced into Bitcoin, I think it'll get adopted by countries and then businesses. When countries adopt it, businesses will also adopt it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Nikhil has asked, so when do you think is the right time to develop a startup? That is during college or after gaining some experience in the work environment?
So I strongly believe that there are two periods in your life when you should seriously think about startup. One, while being a student. And the reason I say this is, you have, you're full of knowledge, you're full of enthusiasm, you're, kind of no baggage in terms of, fear and things like that. And so that's the best time. And there are no dependents also. You're not married, don't have children, and sometimes parents will also support you, right? So that's a very good, teachers also will support you. So that's a very good time. And if you fail, you can actually add that to your resume and go and take a business. And that's what I thought when I got the opportunity to be part of the founding team of Infosys. That's really what I thought. I have no burden on myself. My family is not dependent on me, etc. And if I fail, if Infosys fails, I'll just go and take a job and continue, right? So that's one good time. The second time to start a business, I believe, is when you are around 40, 45. Your children are starting to go to college, so they are not dependent on you. They are kind of self-sufficient, and they can take care of themselves. And you've also got a nest egg. You've got some income saved, money saved, and things like that. And maybe one of the husband or wife maybe can think about entrepreneurship. Both of them can start thinking about entrepreneurship. That's also a time when you are actually kind of bored with your professional life and things like that, and you want to do something different. You want to take some risk. You want to have an adventure in life and things like that, because you're bored with what you have been doing for the past 15 years or say 18 years. So that's the second good time. Having said all that, when you have a great idea, when you can find the co-founders, when you can take that risk, definitely there is a risk involved in starting a business. You should. So there is no good time or bad time. You will find examples of people at all ages starting businesses. There is, Walmart was started by Sam Walton at the age of 65. It's the largest retailer in the world, right? So there is no time limit, age limit, nothing. But having said that, two periods I firmly believe where your ability to take risk is best while you're a student and while you're around 40, 45.
Krishnapriya has asked, what do you think about the reskilling industry? There are a lot of companies who provide reskilling to students and unemployed youth and offer them jobs. Does that show the ineffective curriculum we have?
Education is going to be lifelong. You have to reskill. You have to learn continuously. And so that's where the inefficiency of the existing educational infrastructure is exposed. And that's where the private industry has come to take on the reskilling opportunity that is there. But I strongly believe that this will be taken up by the existing education institutions, etc. Now, for example, College of Engineering Trivandrum will have to have a lifelong relationship with its alumni, give them opportunity to reskill. And that's the way that College of Engineering will stay relevant in the future. What you learn through a BE or a BTech program is actually learning to learn. You learn certain skills, you will get a job, but then you'll have to go back and learn again, relearn. And that, if College of Engineering can actually create a space for itself, I think it's a great opportunity actually. And we will also see public-private partnership in doing that. So some of the courses may be delivered by professors internally, and some of the courses may be delivered online. Some of the courses may be delivered by adjunct professors. Some of the courses may be delivered through a partnership with the private sector. So you are going to see transformation of education, and it'll be through public-private partnership in the future.
Okay, thank you, sir. How did you build your team?
So, typically you find co-founders, as I said, from your batchmates, classmates, friends, people who you know, right? It's difficult to imagine that suddenly, you meet over a coffee and decide to start a business, right? Typically it is because you've actually known each other for some time and you trust your co-founders and you start the business. But the key thing is they must have same value systems. They must have same goals in life in terms of horizon. If you want instant gratification, you want to make a lot of money in the next 2 years, then you need to find somebody else who actually wants to make money in the next 2 years. And probably you need to look at a job rather than a startup or something like that. Startup takes much longer. So you have to find people with similar objectives, goals, value systems, and typically that happens, and you trust. So typically that happens by talking to your friends, relatives, etc., classmates, batchmates, co-workers, if you're working for somebody.
Okay. Munawar has asked, most of us have so many ideas, but when it comes to execution, we are dragged by procrastination, fear, etc. How to overcome it and make our dream a reality?
You have to take one idea which you believe in, which you believe has the greatest opportunity, and jump. There is no other way to do this. You have to say, I'm going to, take that jump. I'm going to do it, period. That is the only way it is going to happen. You can keep on analyzing. You can keep on, look at what if and things like that. Talk to a few people, get feedback from people, and then jump. And most companies pivot. Most companies, actually modify the idea as they go along. But the key is to take that step. You must have heard this, right? How do you win a 100-meter race? By running, right? You're not going to win a 100-meter race if you decide not to run, right? So you have to decide and you have to take that step to do it. And you can keep on procrastinating, but it's not going to help you. It will never happen if you do that. So you have to just take the step. Maybe you made a mistake, and then retrace and go back and do it again if you can, or pivot and change your idea and things like that. That's the only way it will happen.
Okay, thank you, sir. How to distribute equity among the co-founders efficiently?
Again, see, you will start with certain responsibilities, right? And based on that, you create an equity pool which people agree to, and that's how it happens actually. And then, as you progress, if you find that somebody is pulling long hours, doing a lot more work, taking more responsibilities, give them more equity. See, what I've learned from the example of experience of Infosys is that a small percentage, a small share of a large pie is much bigger than a large percentage of a small pie. So if your company is valued 10 rupees and you have 50% of that, your share is 5 rupees, right? Now, if your company is valued 100 rupees, and if your share is 20%, right, your share percentage is lower, but that's worth 20 rupees, right? So a large, your goal is to make the pie larger and larger and larger. And in order to do that, sometimes you may have to give up some equity and things like that. You may have to bring in new people. But the key to remember is, the larger the pie, everybody benefits. So no point in having 100% of a zero value company, right? Because it's nothing. So, larger pie is more important than larger percentage. Please remember that.
Okay, that is a very good example that you gave. Mohammad Labib has asked, how will be the future of e-commerce after COVID-19? Because there are many startups in this field currently.
So, e-commerce to some extent has matured. You have large players and things like that. And the key is not to compete with the larger companies like Amazon, etc., unless you have a new idea, you identify a niche, you identify a hyper local ecosystem, you have key insights that you can leverage and things like that. And there are companies that are emerging that are doing well, in spite of incumbents. And so you need to figure that out. I strongly believe that in the Indian context, we are still yet to discover what is the perfect model, right? E-commerce in India probably today handles maybe 10% of the total commerce. 90% of the commerce is still the traditional retail. And out of that, probably 60% is hyper local, traditional, informal, not formal, the neighborhood Kirana stores. And the neighborhood Kirana stores are the ones which actually during COVID did very well initially. Later on, the e-commerce companies came. So, there are still opportunities to create the model, appropriate model for India, even in e-commerce and things like that.
What drives you to keep going when it was really tough?
Well, two things. One, your colleagues want to continue, and they give you the strength. Your family is supporting you; they give you the strength and things like that. And this is why always we look at least 2 or 3 co-founders, right? Not just one founder, because what drives and what keeps them motivated is when somebody is down, the other people pick them up and go forward, right? So they motivate them, each other. And the second one is we felt that our idea is still valid. It's relevant. Our dream is still something that we passionately believed in, etc. And we were willing to sacrifice and wait longer for returns. I know that also keeps you going. So you still passionately believe in the dream, and then you want to actually make that dream come true. And that's what drove me actually. And today also, I feel that there's a lot more things that I can do, a lot more people I can help with. And that's what keeps me going actually. So let me wish all of you the very best. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts, ideas, perspectives. It's a great time to actually be a student, great time to live in India, great time to actually start your career, and I wish you all the very best also. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. On that positive note, let us wrap up this episode of iTalks. Once again, thank you, Chris sir, for being here with us and sharing your valuable insights. And I'm sure that everybody had enjoyed this session and found this session really informative. Thanks a lot on behalf of IEDC and CET.
And thank you for a wonderful moderation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.